All right, so I'm not the first to talk about this, probably not going to be the last. Had a few obligations for content, and I also wanted to see if there was any resolution at all to the situation instead of just jumping right into discussing it if anything was going to change shortly thereafter. And well, my God, I don't think that I've seen anything this egregious in a while. For those who haven't seen just yet, Bungie is in some hot, and I mean really hot water right now with Marathon again. Take whatever feelings you had on the reveal, the gameplay of the closed alpha, take all of that and bank it because it has zero to do with that, but everything to do with a new scandal on art theft. The other day, an artist named Anti-Real over on Twitter shared the following. The Marathon Alpha released recently, and its environments are covered with assets lifted from poster designs I made in 2017. And holy hell, she was not exaggerating one bit. Inspiration would be one thing, but the images provided as reference, it's straight up ripped. Like no text change, just cut and paste into official assets. At best, rearranging the orientation of certain elements, at worst, attempting to cover up signatures of art with a distorted version of an asset that says Anti-Real Daily Series. This was then followed up by Bungie's, of course, not obligated to hire me when making a game that draws overwhelming from the same design language I have refined the last decade, but clearly my work is good enough to pillage for ideas and plaster all over their game without pay or attribution. I don't have the resources nor the energy to spare to pursue this legally, but I've lost count of the number of times a major company has deemed it easier to pay a designer to imitate or steal my work than to write me an email. In 10 years, I've never made a consistent income from this work, and I'm tired of designers from huge companies mood boarding and parasitizing my designs while I struggle to make a living. And final dagger, someone said, I see that Joseph Cross follows you. Is there any insight you can give about the connection there? To which they replied, he's followed me for years and a few others from Bungie. Never had any communication. So like, pardon my French, and this is probably gonna happen a few times in this video, but god damn, dude. This is just, wow. But hey, it doesn't stop there because the official Marathon dev team Twitter account nearly immediately acknowledged it by saying, we immediately investigated a concern regarding unauthorized use of an artist decals in Marathon and confirmed that a former Bungie artist included these in a texture sheet that was ultimately used in-game. This issue is unknown by our existing art team, and we are still reviewing how this oversight occurred. We take matters like this very seriously. We have reached out to Anti-Real to discuss this issue and are committed to do right by the artist. As a matter of policy, we do not use the work of artists without their permission. To prevent similar issues in the future, we are conducting a thorough review of our in-game assets, specifically those done by former Bungie artists, and implementing stricter checks to document all artist contributions. We value the creativity and dedication of all artists who contribute to our games, and we are committed to doing right by them. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. So, I'm not really here to be like the harbinger of truth and justice because frankly, we're all outsiders here looking in. Maybe they're 100% telling the truth, maybe they're 100% lying, but it is pretty suspicious that this was a conclusion that was come to from an investigation mere hours after the allegations, not even allegations, after the plagiarism was made public. They're straight up rips. It happened 100%, plain as day. Whether or not it's actually a former artist employed by Bungie or that's the cover story. I mean, they did say in a sort of mention we'll touch on in a second that it was from 2020 when the game was initially being storyboarded and designed. Whether or not that's actually the truth, who knows? Artists do come and go with large work like this, a lot of them being on contract from my knowledge of artists in the industry, and with Marathon apparently again being in development since like 2020, that drawn out development time over the course of multiple years, it's possible this could have actually been a former employee, their contract ran out, whatever the case. But it's too convenient of a scapegoat to me that it doesn't really clear it of any wrongdoing. Like that is just, it's way too convenient, man. Especially when Bungie has been in or is currently involved with litigation surrounding the topic of stolen work, assets, art, you name it. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, it was made public that Bungie's lawsuit with Destiny 2 that was currently ongoing was going poorly because the nature of the content vaulting system, they couldn't recall things that would then be admitted as evidence here because they don't have access to it, which that in and of itself is, I think personally, insanely stupid. If people pay for the content, they should have access to it. You don't get to take that away as a base content offering without a stipulation beforehand. And even then, if you do stipulate, it's just stupid to be like, all right, this is a rotating thing, you're never going to get it again. But that's a different story for a different day. The courts have been refusing evidence of pulled footage from YouTube videos and lore videos because Destiny can't provide their own vaulted content. They legitimately don't have access to that could otherwise clear them or prove them guilty. But then there's also that handy graphic made that I don't know who made this, I apologize. Just saw it on Twitter summing it up that since 2021, there's been multiple cases of artists having their work taken without credit. So whether or not this is something that is 100% the truth, that it's something that, oh, one bad seed is sort of poisoning the rest of the crop yield here, it doesn't matter because there is that history, there is that precedent already that this has happened before, that it could be embedded deep in the culture of it. I will say the crazy thing to me is that Bungie, like immediately after this, didn't shift their calendar at all and still went ahead with a massive stream Q&A that went kind of exactly how you'd expect, with everybody in the chat just kind of ripping them a new one. So the whole thing just right now seems foobar. You gotta pay the artist at the very least. I think that, truthfully, now I'm not saying that's something that they've ripped off the entire flow one-to-one. There's absolutely ripped assets, but this art style has been in development for decades. It's been something you can trace back to the 80s and stuff like that. And Joe Cross, the art director, does actually have stuff up on his art station from 10, 12 years ago that matches the same sort of design aesthetic. But I personally think if you really want to do well, not only do you offer them a position with the game's development, offer them a high-ranking position, but do something. At this point, credit isn't nearly enough with this. And that's something that is just, dude, the whole situation is just, it's fucked up, man. Like, but to compound on top of this, obviously this is also contributing, but apparently morale is at an all-time low with this game right now, and those working on it. According to games journalist Paul Tassi, morale is dubbed in freefall across all departments. The top level points of his most recent piece on Marathon is that the public explanation for the art theft is exactly what they're saying here at this one, but also internally that's what's being said as well, that Sony and Bungie are legally now sorting through this and going through an audit, which, I mean, they're auditing themselves. We've seen this kind of thing happen before. Whether there's actually accountability that happens as a result, who knows? I definitely think people should be held accountable for this. But also, the vibes have never been worse, as it's dubbed, where everyone has the same concerns about what's happening if Marathon bombs, but that they absolutely can't afford to bomb. There are no signs, apparently, of delaying internally, which is kind of crazy to me, which we'll touch on in a second. Another point being that even before the art theft debacle, apparently due to community sentiment, Bungie was already pulling the plug on its main marketing plans upcoming, which included a new trailer in June and the announcement of pre-orders and everything for that. But also that the upcoming marketing campaign for a beta in August might have been scrapped or entirely reworked into a roadmap of public playtests with no details just yet on that. And finally, that as far back from the beginning, the sort of earliest conceptions of Marathon back in 2025 years ago, that this was pitched to the old guard Bungie leadership, and that they pitched so many things apparently that they knew would work and would not work, including a PvE element of this that was just almost largely or entirely ignored. So there's a lot to break down there. Realistically, I think one of the biggest things comes down to the game needs a delay, man. Like, coming out of playing it early, I was pretty gung-ho because I loved the art style. I thought that there was a lot more potential, but I had really hoped that there was going to be something that with the public playtest, it was going to be a further along build. Because one thing that I said from the very onset was that it seemed like it lacked a lot of things to do in-game and out of game. You had the contracts and stuff that you could end up doing with different factions, but beyond that, there wasn't a whole ton of substance. And they kept talking about all these things of like, oh yeah, the other maps that are going to release that we haven't shown yet or haven't teased just yet, there's going to be a lot that you want to pay attention to with that. And that's going to offer a lot of weight to justify the price tag or whatever. And that's a lot to say and sort of theoretically offer that right up front doesn't offer nearly the value that I think. Like the UESC Marathon ship was one of those things that they said from the very beginning was going to be the main draw, but that wasn't going to be coming at launch, and they didn't show us anything about that, both behind closed doors or publicly. So like, there is a lot right up front that could absolutely warrant, like, you need more time to build this. For me, it's one of those things that I don't see how this launches in September, unless they're just literally trying to rip off the Band-Aid and then move on to whatever's next. I kind of think that the reasoning that we're not seeing this is probably an internal battle between studio and publisher, because Sony is probably the one making that sort of push for a launch happen. They want a return on their $3.6 billion acquisition investment of the studio, with Destiny 2's money printer now slowing down, another game still in development. They want that cash now. But from a top level, I don't see how this happens. Like, are those with the say actively fighting for it behind the scenes? And that's kind of why we're hearing this public language of we're in the early stages of, or we're thinking about. Like, is that why? I mean, that's the language that we keep seeing, and that's the language of something that's releasing into early access, or is building as the game goes on, or that's still a long ways from launch, not one that has a $40 price point and is supposed to go live in like 4 months' time. That, again, is another one of those things that it's just coming back to what they told us early, back in March or whatever. They keep talking about, like, ranked play being a key pillar of the game's launch, but they kept saying that they have ideas for how this is going to work. That's not the language you use of something that is ready to go. You should, at that point, already know how it's going to work. But I don't know, man. Something's got to give. Pay the artist for this situation that we're talking about that stemmed this discussion, at the very least. But I also think that there needs to be some upper level shakeups at Bungie for something. Something has to work, because like this has just been a catastrophic PR disaster. If you want a masterclass on how a game can be revealed, sort of withholding key information from the public and anybody that might want to go to bat for it, then also having these controversies with stolen art and everything, like in the couple of months that this has been now finally out in the public forum, it's just, it swings and misses, man. Like, it's crazy to me. I honestly, like, love the lore of all this kind of stuff. I didn't play the originals, obviously, because I was, like, a toddler at the time whenever the original marathons came out. But, like, reading up on the lore, thinking about what could be, like, if this was a just single-player game diving into the lore of the marathon universe, I think that'd be so sick. But, like, with how much promise of what is surrounding the game versus what ends up being the game itself, what ends up being stolen assets and things like that, it's just, it's a goddamn shame, dude. Like, I wanted this to be super cool. I talked about this when it was first announced years ago on the channel. It was one of the first videos we did that was non-COD related stuff that I was looking forward to this game for so long, that if you told me this was the situation that we'd be in 2 years ago or whatever it was since they did that announcement trailer, I mean, dude, goddamn. I think that's kind of where we're at. I don't know really how to end this video. It's disappointing to say the very least. So let me know your thoughts down below. Drop a like if you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more. And I'll see you in the next one. We got a lot of stuff that isn't COD up on deck this week, I think, if my content calendar actually does persist as it's currently laid out. But love to have you guys in the community. For now, thanks so much for watching. Take care and peace.